Azure includes many security features. In this lesson, we're going to focus in on identity and tools features. And we're going to start off with Azure Identity Services. And there are two components to Azure Identity Services. There's authentication, in which you provide credentials before allowing access to resources. And this typically consists of a username and password, and it proves you are who you are. The second component of Azure Identity Services is authorization. Once you have authenticated, then you're granted access to resources based on permissions. Basically, it's what you are allowed to do. Let's look at an example between authentication and authorization. And here I'm going to use a vehicle license. A vehicle license falls under authentication because it proves who you claim to be. That vehicle license also includes some information about what you can drive, and that is authorization. What type of vehicle can you drive? Is it a car, motorcycle, or transport truck? Just because you have a license to drive a car doesn't mean that you're authorized to drive a truck. Authorization also includes when and where you can drive, such as the times of day and on which highways you can drive. Authentication and authorization are used interchangeably, but they're two very separate items. And be sure you understand the difference between the two if you're going to sit the exam. Next, we have Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is a cloud-based identity and access management solution for your external and internal users. It provides authentication, single sign-on, application management, business-to-business and business-to-consumer identity services, and device management. Azure Active Directory is an incredibly powerful tool, and it is the backbone of Azure and Office 365. There are several courses in the library specifically on Azure Active Directory if you'd like to learn more. Once your users authenticate to Azure Active Directory, then they can gain access to Office 365 as well as other SaaS apps. In my example here, I have Box and DocuSign and Dropbox and Workday, but there are several hundred that you can choose from. Azure also includes multi-factor authentication. When we enable multi-factor authentication, we require 2 or more authentication methods. And these authentication methods could include something you know, such as a password, something you have, such as a phone, or something you are, such as a fingerprint. In my example here, I'm using a username and password, and then I must either have an iris scan, authenticate using my mobile device, or provide a thumbprint. Now let's move on to security tools. These are tools that allow us to look into our Azure environment and see if anything is off. And the first place we're going to start is the Azure Security Center. The Azure Security Center is a security management system, and not only does it work with Azure, but it will also work with your on-premises workloads as well. It will evaluate the security of your current resources, and it will provide threat prevention recommendations as well as threat detection alerts. And from my simple example here, you can see that I do have a couple of alerts. And the ones in red let me know that it's high severity and I should probably look at them soon. The Azure Key Vault is also considered a security tool. The Key Vault is a central repository to store application secrets. The secrets management that are supported are tokens, passwords, and certificates. The key management that is supported is creating and controlling encryption keys. Azure Key Vault also supports certificate management, which includes provisioning, managing, and deploying public and private SSL and TLS certificates. And finally, the Azure Key Vault supports storing secrets that are backed by hardware security modules, otherwise known as HSMs. If you have an Azure Active Directory Premium SKU, then you'll have access to Azure Information Protection, AIP. This can also be found in Office 365. Azure Information Protection will organize and classify documents and emails using labels for classification. And this is done automatically when you create a rule. For example, you might have a document that has a credit card number. Information Protection would detect that credit card number and then automatically classify that document as sensitive. This can also be a manual process for users. Maybe a user's working on a top secret document. They can go ahead and apply the top secret label. And then this will restrict movement of that document to only users who are authorized to see those labels. And finally, our last tool is Azure Advanced Threat Protection, or ATP. Again, you must be in a premium SKU to access this feature. ATP will identify compromised identities. It will also identify and detect advanced threats, identify malicious insider actions, and identify malicious attacks, and then let you know via alerts that there is something going on. These are just a few of the tools that you can use to help secure your Azure environment.